Hi, it's really good to see you again. Today's going to be our last video before Christmas. But I've got a challenge for you today. Could you make an obstacle course? Apologies, parents, carers. Now, you could make it in one room, or maybe you could make an obstacle course between your front door and your back door. You know, things to climb over, go under, things to go round. You've got the idea. I don't need to give you any more. Well, I'm going to take up the challenge as well. So in a minute we'll go. But let me just say, do test out your obstacle course. And if you want to take a video of it, then I'd love to see how creative you've been. So do send me a video to the email address that's on the screen, and I would love to see that. Okay, let's go. Well, how did it go? Did you make a really fun obstacle course? Shall I show you mine? Okay, well, here you go. Here's me attempting to do my obstacle course. But Becky, what has an obstacle course got to do with somebody chosen by God? Because that's what we're thinking about at the moment, isn't it? People chosen by God. Well, that's a very good question. About 700 years before the person that we're going to learn about today was born, God spoke these words through a prophet. There's that word again. The prophet was called Isaiah, and he said these words: "Prepare in the desert the way for the Lord. Make the road in the dry lands straight for our God. Every valley should be raised up. Every mountain and hill should be made flat. The rough ground should be made level. The rugged ground should be made smooth. Then the glory of the Lord will be shown, and people together will see it." Did you hear that? God was saying that somebody was going to come and make a way for the Lord. Somebody was going to go ahead of him and move some of the obstacles in the way. We heard valleys should be raised up so that there are no dips. We heard mountains and hills made flat so that there's no climbing. We heard rough ground made smooth so it's easier to walk on. Well, if you were with us at Sunday at 4 on Zoom last week, then you might remember that we were learning about Zachariah and Elizabeth. Do you remember? We heard how God chose them to have a baby who would grow up to help people get ready for Jesus arriving, for Jesus being born. We learnt that they were to call him John. And it's that John that we are learning about today. Matthew and Luke, in the Gospels that they wrote, both tell us that this John that we're learning about today is the person that Isaiah the prophet was talking about 700 years ago. The one God had promised to send. God chose John to be the one who would go ahead of Jesus and make the way ready for him. What does that mean? Does that mean that John walked in front of Jesus and moved any obstacles out of his way, does it mean that he walked in front of Jesus and found the easiest path so that Jesus didn't have to climb any hills or go into any valleys? No, that's not what it means. It means that John came before Jesus to help to get people's hearts ready for what Jesus had come to do. To get people's hearts ready so that they could welcome Jesus and accept what he had come to do for them. So, what were the obstacles that were in people's hearts? What were the mountains and the valleys and the rough land? Well, maybe one was that they had given up. You see, God had promised that he would send someone to rescue his people. Over and over again he'd promised. But for 400 years, can you imagine that? 400 years, he hadn't said anything. And, well, maybe some of God's people had given up waiting. I'm not patient enough to wait for 400 years. Maybe they'd thought that God hadn't been telling the truth. But then John came and his message was, repent because the kingdom of heaven is coming soon. He was saying, get ready. What God had promised would happen is going to happen very soon. He hasn't forgotten. He wasn't lying. Get ready. So that was maybe one obstacle. But the biggest obstacle was that the people didn't think that there was anything wrong with their hearts. You see, many of God's people were expecting God to send someone who would save them from the Romans who ruled over them. They were looking for a warrior, a soldier who would come in power and save them, not from themselves, but from other human beings. But that wasn't who God had promised to send, because that wasn't their biggest problem. Their biggest problem was that their hearts were turned away from God, and their relationship with God wasn't right. You see, many of God's people thought that they could make themselves right with God by keeping rules, or that they were right with God because of the family that they were born into. But they were all things that they thought they could do themselves. John came and his message was, repent. His message was, stop running away from God. Stop trusting in yourselves and run to him instead. His message was turn around. That's what repent means. Turn around. Turn back to God. Stop thinking that you're okay with God because of the things that you are doing. Stop being blind to all of the ways in which you don't love and worship God, and you don't love other people as God has called you to do. Repent. Start to see that you need someone who can save you and make your relationship with God right. So John's message was, repent, turn around, and get ready, for the kingdom of heaven is coming soon. And when Jesus began to preach, he said the same thing. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is coming soon. John went ahead of Jesus with the same message so that people's ears would be ready to hear it and their hearts ready to receive it. And some people heard John's message and realised that what he was saying was right. And John baptised those people who wanted to stop running away from God and wanted to be rescued. He plunged them in and out of water to show that they wanted to follow God and begin a new life with him. John was chosen by God to help people to get ready for Jesus' arrival and for what he had come to do, to save them from their sins. And we know that Jesus is going to come back again, and we have a part to play in helping people be ready by showing them that being friends with God, turning back to God, is not about doing good things. It's not about keeping rules. It's about trusting him. So let's add John onto our timeline. I've got a picture of some mountains and a valley and those words from Isaiah. And I'm also going to draw a line between John and Zachariah, who we were learning about last week, to remind us that John was Zachariah and Elizabeth's son. John, chosen by God to prepare people's hearts for Jesus coming to earth. Now, rather than me saying a prayer as we come to the end today, I'd like to invite you to pray in a different way. I wonder if you could pray as you tidy up your obstacle course. As you move those obstacles, as you put things away, could you pray for each other? Could you ask God to help you to trust him? Ask him to move those things in your heart that might make it hard for you to trust Jesus. It doesn't matter if you don't know what they are. You can just ask God to help you. And you could pray for other people too, if you'd like to. So I'm going to leave you to pray as you tidy up. But if you'd like to, before you do that, you could join in with the song, God, He Always Keeps His Promises, as we remember that He kept the promise He made all those years ago through Isaiah to send someone to prepare the way for Jesus. I'll see you again sometime soon. Goodbye.